Good. All right, we're live. Okay. Good
Right.
evening, ladies and gentlemen. And we are on our another show on the Bid and Ask interview by Dr. Wealth. And today I have a very special guest because we used to always do interviews with investors or personal finance related. But today I have Ee Chien with me, and he is the founder of a bar, all right, an entrepreneur. And the bar is Jekyll and Hyde. So I first learned about the bar when I was with a bunch of financial bloggers having some gathering just next door to Jekyll and Hyde, the previous location. Yeah, and then thereafter it was natural that we adjourned for our part two just next door, and that was how I went went into Jekyll and Hyde. And it was a good atmosphere. It was very crowded that night, I remember, and there wasn't even any seat for us. So we were actually literally standing and drinking at the same time. Yeah, it was good times. And the second time I came across Jekyll and Hyde was in the newspaper, right, on the not so good news, whereby because of COVID-19, a lot of the bars could not operate, and it doesn't make sense to carry on. And but eventually, right, I also learned that Ee Chien managed to survive and revive the bar and found a new lease of life in another location. And all this was done during COVID-19. So I thought it was a very interesting story, and wanted you to probably share a little bit with our audience, and especially in this climate of COVID-19, right? People do not really know what's the impact, and there may be other entrepreneurs that are listening. Maybe they also need certain inspiration to carry on in these difficult times.
Yeah.
Right. So welcome, Ee Chien.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it, Alvin.
Okay, maybe we start off with of all businesses, right? Why do you even start with a bar?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. In terms of getting into the bar, I actually purchased it. So Jekyll and Hyde's been around for about 7 years now, and I actually bought it from the previous owners about 2 years ago. So it originally started as a speakeasy at the back of the original space, and the front was actually a nail salon, and then it soon expanded to the whole space. But I think in terms of I guess kind of jumping or diving headfirst into entrepreneurship, I actually found it online on a website called businessesforsale.com, where it said established cocktail bar in Tanjong Pagar for sale. And right around that time, I actually had gone to the bar quite often because I worked at Uber then, and our office was around the corner. So when I looked at the photos, I was like, oh, this is Jekyll and Hyde. They're actually for sale. Went and talked to the owner, went and understood what they were doing and all that, and was like, oh, okay, I've got a little bit of extra cash at the moment. Let me just try this out, which was super naive, but wanted to try something different. To be honest, my goal next time in the future is just going to be a hawker and have way lower costs and cook good food for people. But with this, I think it was exciting because I knew the bar, enjoyed the drinks and all that, and wanted to try something a little different. I still have my day job on the side in the tech space, but I think wanted to experience something different too. And honestly, thought it was going to be a lot less time as well as hands-onness as it has been in the past couple of years.
Okay, so I was actually expecting something different, in the sense that you always wanted to start a bar, etc. But thanks for being so frank. And so, which means if there was another business that is not a bar, and probably you also frequent, maybe a ramen shop or what, would you have considered that as well?
Yeah, yes and no. I guess I guess if I knew the ramen shop well and kind of understood it, it would have been something I considered. I think for me in general, entrepreneurship is a combination of different things, right? It's definitely what you're interested in, but it's also the timing and opportunity of what's available at that time. So it can be something that you're building from scratch, but also can be something that you are that you purchase, right? If you're building something from scratch, it could be great because it's the right time, or it could be the wrong time, right? There are plenty of businesses that started at the wrong time with the complete right idea. So just, I think in both ways, it definitely could have gone either way if it was a ramen shop or a bar. There probably are some that I probably wouldn't have done at all, but if I didn't know the space well enough, but I felt a bar would be relatively okay to handle.
Okay, but definitely what I'm trying to probably elicit out of this discussion is that probably there is some bit of passion in
Oh,
the
yeah,
bar
no,
business.
definitely. No, part the reason why I purchased it is because I love the space, right? I love the experience there, and I think in terms of both enjoying drinking, enjoying cocktails, but is also being able to create the right experience, right, for the customers. And I think it's a certain type of experience. I mean, your example for ramen shop, yes, there's one type of experience that you create for the customer, but I think from a drinks in a bar and a cocktail perspective, it's a lot different, right? You're really, I think, get it's a place where people come to be happy, right? And they want to enjoy themselves and have a good time with their friends, or with a date and whatnot. And I think that's what definitely attracted me to it too.
Okay. And I guess Jekyll and Hyde wasn't the name of the original bar that you taken
Oh
over.
no, it was actually. So it has
It
been
was.
the same name for the past
I
7
see.
years. But I think also, like, name wise, to your point, it was something that we felt that we could also play with, right, and be able to use that name to, um, work on different concepts or different projects too within the space, which is what we're
Okay.
doing more now with the new space that we've taken over.
Because I was about to ask you why Jekyll and Hyde, if you know any of the history why it was named that way.
Yeah. I mean, Jekyll and Hyde is the name of a novel, right? By Robert Stevenson. It's a pretty old novel, but I mean, the whole concept or basis of that is a scientist that kind of like went whack on the other side, and that's why you've got your Dr. Jekyll and then your Mr. Hyde, who's his alter ego that's a little more nuts, essentially. So yeah.
Okay, so which means probably in the daytime when you're at their job, they're one type of personality, and when they're at the bar, they're another type. So
Yeah.
probably I'm just making wild guesses.
Yeah.
All right. So understand the toughest period was probably during COVID-19, right?
Mhm.
So if you could share a little bit about what actually happened the moment that the circuit breaker came on, right?
Yeah.
How did you feel, and as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. No, so I think in terms of circuit breaker, it happened really quickly, right? I think what happened, it first went from social distancing to shutting down like a whole bunch of F&B establishments to like full circuit breaker, right? So I think when social distancing first came into play, I think we were able to adapt pretty quickly. Thankfully, our tables were spaced relatively far apart already, which helped. We lost probably about like 20-25% of our of our seating capacity, but it wasn't where some places they lose like 50% or something like that, right? But I think that's when people started to get a bit worried already, and you could definitely it was weird. Like there was some days there were more people, and some days were less, because I think there were the people who were just like afraid and wanted to stay home already, and then there are people who just wanted to like drink as much or eat as much as possible before they assumed the worst, right? I think once they start shutting down bars and restaurants, thankfully we have a restaurant license and we still were serving food, but we had to make sure that we featured that a lot more prominently, because the ambassadors or whatever were start MOH and all that were starting to come around, making sure that you were serving food also, right? And so we had to make sure that we were putting that at the forefront. Even though people were coming to do the drinks, right? And we had to be like, hey, make sure you like are getting some food too. And then when the shutdown happened, that's when it was like, pardon my friends, like shit hitting the fan, right? Where we're just like, what do we do now? Like bottled cocktails was something that we had considered a while back, but we had never really executed on. But I think all the bars in general realized that that was the only way to be able to survive or to generate some revenue. So we figured we would try that out. So the first week we did it, we made like $1,000 and something dollars. I think we had like 12 or 13 orders or something like that. And we're like, okay, this is a start. But it definitely wouldn't be enough, right? Because we've got a few people on our team. We definitely were still paying the rent at that point in time before things really went south with the landlord. And I think we started to try to figure out what we could make and all that too. So we basically went in 1 week from an in-dining model to a full delivery model. And we had to like reach out to various contacts to get the right delivery drivers. We had to source the bottles. And one of the hardest issues that we had was actually getting bags, the packaging. So the first week, we didn't even give bags. We just like delivered it in like leftover like Grab food and I think like Food Panda bags that we had. And then we had to also, with some of them, actually just carry the bottles and like give it to people and stuff like that. But people were quite understanding. And then we had to go like source for the bags, which was like stressful in and of itself because a lot of the packaging companies were closed. at that point in time. But so like I think as COVID progressed, essentially, everyone realized that was going to be the new normal, where it went from like a few weeks of lockdown to a few months of lockdown, and that's where the orders started to pick up slowly. But it wasn't until the news article that you read about that came out on CNA that things actually started to pick up just a bit more. That actually really helped us to see a light at the end of the tunnel. Because to be honest, like when the article came out, we were going to shut down because there was no avenue out. The landlord was being a complete dick, and then like with our revenue, it just wasn't enough to be able to like find a new place, right, for us to be able to operate out of. So yeah, that was kind of like the COVID back to that point, essentially.
Okay. Did the government support or the GSS help in any ways?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, right? Any cash in hand is helpful, right? But I think one thing that was a bit not completely off, but there's an that they didn't foresee, is that basically we had less staff in November versus more staff in March, and so we were getting GSS for like say 2 or 3 staff versus 3 or 4 staff, and so you obviously get a little less than you should. Based on the current employee numbers that we had. But I mean, of course, without that, look, I think the amount that we got was, yeah, like it was a decent amount, which allowed us to pay our staff. And we're waiting for the next GSS at the end of July. So we'll see how that goes. But I think it still is a worry for a lot of F&B in general.
Okay. Yeah. How do you manage your staff? Because I think that they will be equally worried as well, if not more worried about their rice bowl.
Yeah, no, super hard, right? I think when we told them we were shutting down, I think one wanted to go and try something else anyways, and the other 2 were just trying to figure out what to do. But I think once those articles came out, within a couple days, I think I just realized that we really needed to try and fight. 2 reasons: one, because we realized the brand was pretty strong, but 2, because like there was just nowhere else for our team to go, right? Like that at that point in time, there was no F&B that was going to hire anyone, right? And so like really wanted to find a way to keep the bar alive, and that's where we just went really, really aggressively on the delivery of the cocktails, as well as the selection that we were providing to our customers.
Okay, so which means the article actually helped a lot.
It helped. It really did. Like that article, like was our lifesaver. I can't thank the author or the journalist enough, but it really turned the tide for us, because I think without that, we wouldn't have been able to, and maybe even not so much the increase in orders. That was a short period of time, but more of the opportunities that it presented in terms of who we could work with or what we could do next. Because a lot of other landlords and other like F&B establishments reached out to say, hey, how can we help, or how can we work together, so that we can all survive together, or how we can support one another.
So that's the amazing thing, right? Because even during these difficult times, and everybody is feeling it, but somehow they have some capacity to help, and they are more than willing to reach out to you.
Yeah, so I think from a landlord perspective, there are landlords that are nicer, that have more empathy, or maybe are more desperate. I don't know which one it is, right? But at least they have the gumption to say, hey, let's like try and figure out how we can do this where it's a win-win situation for both, as opposed to a lose-lose situation, right? And I think second, yes, I mean the F&B community, to be honest, has always been a super tight-knit community, and even more tight-knit with COVID. Like before COVID, I mean everyone was super helpful. Like if you need to borrow a bottle of like this alcohol, cost your friend out, so I'll just run over from one bar to another to help one another out. Run out of ice, run out of mint, same story and all that, right? So it's always been I think F&B is the one industry that I've been just amazed by. It's one where no one actually really tries to like backstab anyone, and it's like trying to support one another.
Oh, that's nice to hear about that. And F&B industry is actually a very big, very diverse segments that's within it, right? So I always have the impression that starting a bar is probably one of the hardest in the entire F&B industry, right? And there's also someone in the audience that was asking, can you talk us through the economics of running the bar? So I guess there's always this cloud of mystery, right? Of running a bar. What are the costs that entail? What are major obstacles in running a good bar?
Yeah, I can definitely talk about that. I think what I'll do is I'll break it down into, I think, going through a balance sheet essentially, and just help you guys kind of like look at that, right? I think So I think when you look at F&B, yes, there's bars and then there's restaurants, right? And they're very different because you're catering to a different customer base. You've also got a different cost of goods that you have to take into account. But if you're looking at a bar specifically, I think the very first thing is obviously your revenue, your top line revenue is just based on the drinks that you sell, right? But one of the things that we didn't do well with Jekyll, and to be honest, the previous owners didn't do very well with, was having a day program. So a bar is always a place where people go to drink at night, right? And I guess when you're breaking down bars, you also have to look at bars and what they sell. You've got those that sell wine. You've got those who sell brown liquids, which is like basically a beer, and then you've got us, which are cocktail bars. So if you look at beer and wine, your cost of goods are very straightforward. You buy a bottle of wine, you sell it at you buy a bottle of wine, say at $20, you sell it at $80, right? Beer, you buy it at $3 a glass essentially, or a pint, you sell it at like $6. It's very straightforward. But for cocktail, it's very different because cocktails are very customizable, but secondly, they also have a lot more ingredients in there. And so that's where it becomes a bit more complicated because your cost of goods are coming from a lot more different streams. When you're looking at a cocktail and you're building it, you have to look at the different types of alcohol that you put in. You have to look at the mixers that you put in, and then you have to put in also the ingredients and all that. And then from a glassware perspective, if you're serving wine, you have wine glass. Serving beer, you have beer glass. When you're serving cocktails, you have like 20 different cocktail glasses that you have to serve out of. I mean, like we just moved to our new space and we still have most of our what's this called our glassware in storage. And some people are like, "Hey, what's your old glassware?" And we're like, "It's coming. We just need to like unpack," you know. And so yeah, so you've got your revenue that comes in. Your cost of goods is automatically your what you're paying for your drinks, and your cost of goods are generally anywhere from about 28 to 35%. So on average, you're probably looking at a 30 or 31% gross margin there, or 70% gross margin. So with that 70%, that's where in general F&B, that's where everyone gets killed. So even though the margins are actually better on the drink side, because if you're looking at restaurants and food and all that, it's anywhere from 40 to 50% even sometimes, depending on the type of food you serve. And so then you always have to increase the prices because obviously if it's an absolute value, you have to charge more to survive, right? But where it really kills you are a few different things. You have to look at your staff cost, which is generally going to be about 20 to 25%. Then you have to look at your rental. So one of the bad things about it is our rental was actually about 25% in the previous place, which was untenable. It just wasn't something that was survivable. If you want to look at rental that's a bit more sustainable, you probably want to be looking at rental that's about in the 15% range. And then on top of that, you have a whole bunch of different things that just kind of like pop up. You've got your insurance, you've got your utilities, you've got your one thing that's very expensive for bars is grab rides home for your staff, because you have to give them transport home because they work past midnight. I mean, you don't have to, but it's industry practice. But back at the time, most of the time it's surging, right? Like you're like $20, $30 and all that. So it adds up very quickly. And you've got all these like basically hidden costs. I think one of the biggest hidden costs for F&B is when things break down. Your aircon breaks down suddenly, your ice machine breaks down suddenly, your fridge breaks down. So you can have 1 month where you fix everything. You're like, oh, fantastic, nothing's going to happen. And the next month, I don't know, your lights will break or something like that. And that's another thing that you have to factor in terms of costs. So in terms of those economics, it's simple, but it's not. It's simple because technically you should know what your revenue and what your costs are, but it's harder to control costs sometimes than one thinks, I guess.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing a very detailed breakdown of the expenses and some of the tips out there. And I guess the surprises are always the expenses you never expect, like what you mentioned, right? This aircon break, the lighting breaks and things like this. And I guess for alcohol or for bars, it's more difficult to differentiate one bar from another because the products are the same, right? And whereas when it comes to food, you can always say that my taste is different from another dish that's identical with mine, right? But tastes are different. So, but probably I guess for a cocktail bar, there is some art form that's there that serve as a differentiation, right?
Correct. So I think if you go to like a pub, right, and you're drinking a beer, generally speaking, you're just standing there and you're just chugging a few different beers, right? There isn't very much any differentiation there. But cocktail bars, I guess, function a bit more like restaurants in the sense that it is a very unique menu that you're going to have when you go from one place to another. Obviously, if you go to a normal bar, they're just going to give you classics, but even then, they don't sometimes may not execute it as well, right? Because the foundation of any great cocktail bartender is they're going to be able to do their cocktails very well, and they're going to be able to help you to explain and understand, what their ratios are. Because, like, say someone's making a Moscow Mule or they're making like a gin and tonic and all that, they do have certain things that they do change about it with the types of garnish they use, with the type of gin they use, with the ratios that they use, and they will explain to you why they do things like that with a whiskey sour and so on and so forth. Then when you get to like the specialty cocktail bars like us, like Jigger and Pony, like Tippling Club and all that, that's where it really makes a difference, because you're doing two things. One, you're creating an experience for the customer, and then two, you're creating unique flavors. You're not going to go to Jekyll and Hyde and Jigger and Pony and have the same cocktail essentially. They're either going to be twists of the classics in completely different ways, or they're going to be their own unique concoctions. So that definitely is a key differentiator. I think one of the things for me though is that really differentiates cocktail bar A from cocktail bar B is customer service, and that's something that we're really trying to instill for a team, or we're trying to push on more, because at a certain point, all cocktail bars are at a certain level, right? I guess. I mean, it's like if you go to like 10 3-star French Michelin restaurants, right? 3 Michelin star French restaurants, they're all going to be somewhat similar to a certain extent, right? They're different but similar, and that goes the same with cocktail bars, and that's where how you feel, and that's to your point, that passion. How do you make people feel, and that's what differentiates like different cocktail bars from others, I guess.
Okay. So which means the bartenders need to be like relationship managers as well.
Exactly, and even your floor staff, being able to help people understand what they're drinking, and all that. People like to be able to do that, right? And when we drink cocktails, that's where you're tasting the different flavors too. It's kind of like when people eat, right? And you have a particularly well cooked dish, you're also tasting the layers that and the time they've taken to do that. And that goes the same with cocktails, because it can be as simple as something that's being built that still takes time, or it can be like for us, we infuse one of our cocktails. We infuse the gin with chrysanthemum, and that takes a few days. We do a peanut butter and jelly cocktail, and that one is a wash of like peanut butter as well as gin. But then we also have to like make it into a wash where it's actually clear. So when you get our peanut butter and jelly cocktail, it's kind of like orange. But when you taste it, you're like, hey, where's the peanut butter coming from? Even though we actually use peanut butter to do that, right? So it definitely is an art form.
Okay, so which means the bartenders that you get would probably be of higher standards, and that would translate to higher costs as well, right?
That's correct. That is correct, because you do have to bring in people that are experienced and have that knowledge or that ability to know how to mix things, as opposed to pouring a glass of wine or a bottle or a glass of draft beer, right? Something like that.
So the next question is, how do you find talents? Right?
So I mean, the industry is pretty small in Singapore, in the sense that generally everyone knows who's who. And I think that our bartenders do want to try different things and learn new things over a while. Our current head bartender is a guy named Michael Fong, super talented. He won a Diageo's Rising Star award last year. But we actually found him because my ex-business partner actually found him at a food handler's permit class. He was like doing his food handler's permit, and he was kind of like in between roles and stuff like that, and that's how we found him. But we've got a couple other solid bartenders. Byron Tan he was previously at Smoke and Mirrors, and then previously at the Long Bar at Raffles Hotel. I mean, unfortunately, like Raffles Hotel, I think had to let some people go, and we got lucky at the time that we needed to hire someone. So there is definitely that interchange between the different bars, and then also there are people that come over from overseas. So in a non-COVID period of time, you actually do have some quite talented bartenders. I think the Lo and Behold group actually has quite a good selection of not Lo and Behold, Jigger and Pony group. They have like bartenders from like Italy and like Japan and stuff like that. For us, we were sticking with the locals for the moment. They're also super talented.
All right. So which means that what I hear is it's more on because the industry is small, so everybody knows everybody. It's easy to know who is available at that point in time, so you can just so-called strike a conversation and see whether the interest is there, right?
Yes.
Okay. And let's look at some of the questions from the audience. And those who are listening in, right, we are probably about halfway of the session already. If you have more questions, please just write it in the comment box, and we can address as many as we can, especially if you are going to open a bar, all right? Ask as many questions as you can. Okay.
or F&B, or
Uh,
yeah. So for Alfred, I guess I can, there are a couple of the questions I can.
oh,
Alfred, we're at 74 Neil Road, so you can pop by anytime. Text
yeah,
me too.
yeah, probably we should talk about the new location, right? So
Yeah,
I also read that the Cheeky's founder, one of the founders, read that piece that covered Jekyll and Hyde, and she reached out, and you guys managed to work out something on a
yeah. I can talk about that and then talk about how we've kind of like evolved actually in the past few weeks also. So I think, yeah, Victor, to your point, I think when we first started, we actually we were working with Cheeky to basically structure in such a way where we were sharing the rental, sharing the people costs, and then also kind of like sharing the space where we would take care of the drinks and then they would take care of the food. So we did that for a couple of weeks and it went fairly well. But I think what I realized pretty quickly was that I, I think as I've been reflecting on it, I really want to build Jekyll and Hyde as a brand and not just as a bar. And that includes like being able to take care of the whole experience. So I think the Cheeky team has been was doing a pretty good job and all that too. But I think we also realized that we wanted to have the whole space. So actually, we talked to them, and we are actually going to be taking over the whole space and building Jekyll and Hyde into that full like 2-story space where we are serving our cocktails, and then we also actually just brought on our new head chef. He was formerly the head chef at Shanghai Dolly and at Straits Clan, the members club, and he's actually working on and we've actually already launched or pre-launched our Modsin or modern Singapore cuisine menu, where we have things from like chili crab nachos to kurobota, cai tao gui, to chicken tikka satay, to like Sabah bihun, which is like super nice. So yeah, it's been interesting. I actually am in the middle of, and completing raising a small round too, to take on some investors as we kind of expand this brand into more than just a cocktail bar, but more into a holistic space as well as brand where we branch into different revenue streams like weddings and coffee and whatnot.
Congratulations, right? So expanding from a bar beyond that to become a restaurant or it's
And
more like
a
a
brand,
really
yeah,
experiential kind of space that you're trying to create, right?
exactly.
But what I find amazing is that probably during this period, COVID-19, a lot of entrepreneurs will be a lot more risk averse, right? But you totally went the other way, right? Totally went the other way, and you're saying that, oh, I'm going to expand, I'm going to operate more than beyond just and bar, and I'm going to buy out the space that I was residing just one portion of it, and then you're raising around to expand the business even more, and really realizing that the making the passion even bigger and the mission even bigger. So I'm just curious about what caused that, or what drive that's in you. That I don't know, you call it passion or belief in that dream.
Yeah. So I think it's that. I mean, I guess it's a couple of things. One is the whole go big or go home, right? It's like you either like kind of subsist as you are, or you try and like make it something better. So, I mean, I have to say, like for me, like COVID was actually a blessing. I mean, if you asked me a month ago, I've been like, no way in hell, but like I think looking at it back now, it really was a blessing. As in, if we had stayed at the old space, Jekyll was doing okay, like we were doing fine, but we weren't doing amazing. One, because again, we didn't have the daytime, and two, obviously, there's enough competition around and all that, right? I think for me, what I realized over that COVID period was that Jekyll really was a brand and was trying to figure out how to like utilize that and execute on that. But I think when I brought on a couple team members that, our new GM is a guy named Andrew Zheng, super awesome, has been in the industry for like 10, 15 years now. And then Mike, we were talking to our head bartender too, and seeing what we wanted to create. I think that's when we realized that we felt that we had the passion and the drive to be able to do something like that. And so, people were starting to come in and get the drinks already. And we said, hey, we do want to have control of that food so that we can create the experience. And then when we looked at the space, we're like, hey, this space really is conducive for us to do a few different things. So, we want to expand into, again, as I mentioned, like wedding. I'll give you a few couple examples, I guess. We want to do go into weddings, and when you go to a Chinese wedding, and give you like at the table like 2 pieces of chocolate or like a paperweight for your like take home gift and all that. We want to give them personalized cocktails. Like, so if say Alvin, you're getting married or you are married to your wife, it's like a
I'm too
personalized.
late for that.
Oh, okay. But yeah, like personalized cocktails, right? And that ties into the couple, and then we hold your bachelor and hens party there too at the same time. I think second, like in terms of location, we want to tap on the pink dollar because we are right by tantric and taboo, the gay bars and all that, and we want to give them a better experience as opposed to just like getting drunk. And then if you're looking at the daytime, it's being able to take that food menu and expand it into a holistic all-day menu, which we are doing right now, where you can have your kura bottle cai tiao kueh, whether you want it for brunch or whether you're drunk at like 10 p.m. and that you really need something substantial or a bit more pan fried, right? And then like expanding into like the daytime where we do coffee with that too. So we've also started to work on a couple partnerships. We just announced one with Airbnb and STB to do like cocktail experiences for people, and then we're working with some local brands right now to do bottled cocktails as well as some local celebrities. So yeah, just leveraging the brand, using that one space, and then building it out. So a lot of F&B, they like to, if they're doing really well, they expand to another unit or a different location. I don't want to do that. I want to keep to one space, have fixed cost, and then like expand the revenue streams as much as possible.
Okay, totally different strategy.
Yeah.
And I heard that you discussed with your general manager and your head bartender, right? Would you also say that because you have built a team that is equally devoted to this business, and they also give you some of the confidence that you guys can put this through
100%.
together?
The team is core. If I didn't have the team, we'd be like dead in the water, right? Like the team is super important, and because they believe in it also, and they have the ideas and they're jamming about it too, and all that is where we're able to really execute because they're the ones on the ground daily, right? And they're the ones that are doing all the hard work. So yeah, definitely.
Okay. How do you then build this team, right? Because I guess a lot of bosses or entrepreneurs would love to have a great team, right?
Mhm.
But you always hear people complaining and what politics in the company. So how do you actually build it up?
There's a lot of give and take, right? And I think in terms of the people that you bring on, you're going to have some bad hats and you're going to have some good hats, all right? And it really is something that takes time. Like honestly, I think a few months into it, we had a bar manager that was stealing money and we had to like fire him automatically, right? And then you've got the people who your part-time staff. Some of them are like just like really don't care, and then some of them are like super devoted. I think it just took time, and we were able to eventually build that right team. And I think the culture right now hinges on the fact that we all are hungry to make Jekyll survive and do well, not just from a rice bowl perspective, but also build something that is of value and that you can put your name to and say, hey, I really spent the last 2 or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years or 10 years building this. And this is, something that we own together.
Okay, so what I hear is that probably is a more trial and error kind of a way to figure out who are the good players and who are not, and which means is it supposed to be ruthless when it comes to like firing underperforming staff, or of course if it's like clear cut, dishonesty, you should fire them. But what if it's not dishonesty? Maybe it's just not so
Yeah.
passionate job.
Yeah, sometimes if it's underperformance, you definitely give them the time, right? And we did that with a few of our staff. Some of them eventually just lose the energy or the passion to do it because they don't have as much in general. And then with the ones that really are trying, you do work with them. I think we had one in particular that really was trying, but it was just like week after week and of just like things that weren't working out and issues with customers and all that. And we had to unfortunately let that one of them go. But I think we try to keep our staff on as much as possible. I think, it also is hard to find good staff, right? And so you're just trying to keep, or even staff in general, sometimes it's hard to find. So you try to keep them on anyways.
Okay. If let's say times are better, right? Because I guess even the staff, most of them are understanding during this period. They know that it is tough to run the business. And let's say during good times, what are some of the ways you use to retain good staff or to reward them so that their loyalty stays?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, honestly, in the past 2 years, we haven't really done much except for good job. And I think we go on a couple team meals here and there. But I think going forward is trying to understand how to incentivize them. So I'm looking and thinking about a couple different ways to be able to do that, both from I think career growth perspective, especially if we can build the brand out, and then second, financially too, see how we can share in the success together.
Okay. And just now you also mentioned you want to build a brand, and you also said that you wanted to keep it within one space so that the fixed costs are more or less predictable, right?
Yeah.
So, because my interpretation is more of, right, if you're trying to build a brand, that means that naturally you will expand beyond just one premise, right? So, which is which?
Yeah, so I think when building the brand, you can look into it, right? Yes, premise is one, but you can build it into a brand where people are using your stuff, right? It's kind of like, there are two ways to do it. Either you do licensing and franchising, or you build a brand as in you're building different, I guess, products that people can buy, right? So again, if it's Jekyll and Hyde, it can be Jekyll cocktails and Hyde coffee. And then the revenue stream, the wedding, you're building two different things, right? So like different avenues, the weddings into the partnerships where you're working with people to do their bottled cocktails. You're expanding to delivery, where you provide not just bottled cocktails, but also kits or sets. So there are a lot of different ways that you can build the brand without having to move into a new space, because the brand is tied to the cocktails and food and whatnot. But it can be one where you don't have to move out of the space, I guess.
Okay, understand. So, which means there are is a more intangible thing that everything hinges on it, right? That's the
Yeah,
brand there.
exactly. Well, I mean, it's like if you do bottled cocktails, and we did a partnership with Celebration. They're a pretty big online website, but they've always done wine only and beer, but they didn't have cocktails, so we did bottled cocktails with them. And that's part of building the brand, right? Because they said like Celebration bottled cocktails in conjunction with Jekyll and Hyde. So that's one brand thing, right? And if we're doing our catering and all that, that's another way of building your brand, but it doesn't have to be a new location either.
Okay. And talking about F&B industry as a general trend in Singapore, as we know that there are our beloved Singaporean local foods, people are worried that it's getting extinct because there isn't a new generation that's coming up to take over majority of businesses, right? Yes, we have here and there young hawkers or young people who start cafes or restaurants, but it seems like the overall trend is that there are more retirees than people who are starting F&B business in Singapore, right? Or how do you see this trend in Singapore F&B space? How would it change in, say, 10 years later?
Yeah, I mean, I've actually thought about that before, and I'm actually worried about that too. I think it's like, who's going to actually take over and do that, right? I went to a panel a while back where they were talking about like Singapore hawker culture and like the food culture and all that. And I think that's the struggle, right? Because I mean, things aren't getting any cheaper. I think if the people who started the hawker stalls where they've been grandfathered in the rent. So if you rented like 20 years ago or 30 years ago and you're paying $100 or $200 in rent, you're paying the exact same amount now, right? But you're obviously making more. Conversely, there are places. I think Lad and Dad was an example where the rental was like $3,000 a month for where was that, Maxwell Hawker Center. So it's like not cheap, right? So I think for the local food space, to be honest, I'm not sure. I think I am worried too, because obviously Singaporeans like the next new shiny thing, and there are a lot of cool restaurants and all that. And I think that's why, to a certain extent, we're going back into Singapore cuisine and saying like, how can we elevate this so people are willing to pay more, but how people are willing to, I guess, view it in a different light. There's this chef called Jeremy Nui. He does a bunch of different food concepts and stuff like that in Singapore. But his point was, one day he decided to do, and he did a pop-up at Jekyll with this, but it was basically a sukaman, like the Japanese dipping ramen, but he did it with laksa. Essentially, he made this like dipping broth that was a laksa broth with like some char siu and like ramen noodles and all that. And he said like, I'm going to charge $20 for this as opposed to $3. And like his the reason why he did that is because he had seen some article where some uncle had changed his laksa price from $3 to $3.50 just to like deal with rising costs, and people were complaining about the 50 cents. And he's like, what the hell? Like, why are people complaining about 50 cents? And I think that is one of the things that the F&B community in Singapore has to try and figure out. How do we, keep the food culture alive here in Singapore? Because I do agree there aren't enough people taking over, and to that I don't have the full answer.
Because I start to observe that it's getting corporatized. There are
Mhm.
just a few bunch of groups that is doing a lot of similar shops right around the
Yeah, like
island.
fishball noodles. Like if you go to Food Republic, I think there's one guy that owns like 7 or 8 fishball noodle shops.
Yeah, exactly right. Or I do know like was one group like Fei Xiong, right, which
Yeah,
has a lot of similar stores, and they also open probably like the EAT, right? So it becomes very corporatized that the art is lost, and it became just economies of scale,
yeah,
pushing the minimum product, that people will buy at a price that is low enough for everyday consumption,
yeah.
right? I asked that is because I noticed that when you talk about the menu, about the new Jekyll Hyde, right, you had some local flavors and the
Yeah.
fusion. I was just wondering off my mind whether that is the new trend that's going forward. That actually maybe if you really want more unique local food, it's no longer that $4 or $5 in the future. It's really that you have to pay for the art because of the scarcity in the supply.
I mean, that's a really good point, actually. I mean, that'll be interesting to see in the next, yeah, as you said, like 10 or 15 or 20 years, right? Uh, but I mean, that's a bit scary also. Can you imagine in like 20 years if there are no hawkers left, or the hawkers are all like, I don't know, just yeah, from companies?
Corporatized.
That wouldn't be great, because then you're not getting the depth of flavor, right? Like you're not getting like the Hokkien Mee with like the wok hei or the Chai Tao Kueh, where they really know how to like crisp it up and all that, or Bak Chor Mee, where it's the right blend of like the chili and the vinegar and the soy sauce and all that. Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit scary.
Yeah, that would be the end of the food blogs as well, man. Right? There's no differences to talk about anymore.
High-end one, I guess. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Um, let's talk a little bit about what was I referring to? Um, I lost that chain of thought. Right. Okay. It's fine. Maybe I'll just ask you, right? What is your because you run a cocktail bar, right? What is your favorite cocktail?
Mm. So we had our old menu and our new menu. Okay, so from our current menu, okay, so one thing is we were always famous for this cocktail called Mr. Bean. So we still have it off menu, so you can get that anytime. It's a Tao Hui cocktail, so it's a Lao Ban Tao Hui, Kaya, Frangelico, a couple other ingredients, and then a whole bunch of vodka, which you can't taste at all. So if you drink 2 or 3, you'll get like smashed drunk. But it's super tasty, super easy to drink. That's definitely one of my favorites. And off our new menu, one that I really like is something called Peach Please. So the base is Hendrick's gin. We've got dried mango flavors in there, and then we've got peach obviously in there. And it's a very fruity cocktail, very, very, very tasty, very easy to drink because it's like pretty light and refreshing too at the same time. And because we take that gin and we also do infuse it with some stuff, it's actually pretty awesome. Another one that we do quite well that I really like is our PB&J, the one that I mentioned. So it really does have those hints of like peanut butter and jelly. So if you're allergic to peanuts, don't drink it, please. But other than that, it's a super super yummy cocktail because it has those elements, but you can tell that there's obviously been effort and time put into crafting it. That you're not just obviously drinking peanut butter with jelly stuff into it. Yeah.
Okay. Do you sense that the cocktail culture is improving in Singapore? Is it growing?
Yeah, no, it is, and it has over the past 5 years. I think like the cocktail culture really started in Singapore about 70 years ago, right when Jekyll and Hyde started, Jagger and Pony started, and over the years it really has gotten better. And you see more and more coming out and more interesting ones. Like Elephant Room opened up near us. They do like India, a little. Their concept is like little India inspired cocktails, where they take like spices and like ingredients from that part of the world or from Little India also, and craft really interesting cocktails, right? I mean, if there wasn't a nascent cocktail scene or a budding cocktail scene, like Native wouldn't have been able to come about where they, play around with really interesting ingredients. And then you can obviously just go to a place like, say, Atlas and have like a very good classic cocktail, or Manhattan and do the same thing. And then obviously with us, with Jekyll and Hyde, with some of the other cocktail bars, we are constantly innovating and giving you a new menu every 6 to 9 months, right? So that you're always trying something new and something different.
Okay. I asked because I also observed that there's an increasing number of cocktail bars in Singapore. So I
Yeah.
suppose supply will have to catch up with demand, right? And
Yeah.
usually it's not the other way around. uh, so I suppose that there is this culture that's going on, right? Just that among my friends, I noticed that they are not really cocktail people. They are just very I don't know, ruffian like beer, you know. They
Yeah,
just like
I like a good Guinness also, man.
okay, so I was wondering, right, where do these cocktail sippers come about, right? Are they more like the young people or middle age? Is there a specific demographics that we are talking about?
Yeah, I think a general group there is probably about 25 to about 45. So it is a bit older, younger as in like the 25 age, because cocktails are generally more expensive, right? Like a pint of beer can be $10, but your cocktail is going to be at least $20. So you are serving a customer base that has at least a few years of work experience. So they've been able to earn a bit more. And then the upper end, it's people that do enjoy like drinks before or after dinner. I mean, you can drink wine, you can drink beer and all that, but cocktails hit a different spot, right? You can either have it as dessert or, again, as mentioned, it really is a craft. And so people are going there for the experience to see the different concoctions that the bartenders come up with. And then second, again, that whole experience in that bar space. Because like drinking at a cocktail bar is different from drinking from a wine bar or a beer bar, right? Or a pub or whatnot. So I think it solves a different need or different purpose, which people are looking to have.
Okay, okay. Are there more female drinkers for cocktails?
Yeah, I think it's about probably like 60 or 70% female, and then like 30 or 40%, 30% male, probably 20 or 30% male. So we have a good range of whiskeys for them to drink also, meaning for the men mostly. Although you have some ladies who will drink a good whiskey too. And then we have these things called punch bowls. So they're basically a cocktail in a bowl version where people can get like quite drunk because there's a full bottle of vodka, a full bottle of gin, or a full bottle of whiskey in it too.
Okay, I try not to go to gender things, but I think it's interesting, right, to have a good majority of the cocktail drinkers are female, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a reason for that?
I don't have a good reason. Maybe because I don't know they're prettier, or maybe they appreciate the finer things in life, and guys just want to like get smashed. Uh, but I mean, you do have a good number of men that do come in and really do enjoy the cocktails too, and they do like that to enjoy that with their friends or with dates or even by themselves. I've seen individual guys who just come in and sit there and drink and have a good cocktail, because cocktails aren't necessarily like girly or anything, right? If you have a whiskey sour or an old fashioned or Moscow Mule or whatever, those are very quote unquote manly cocktails, right? So, um, I mean, we have some drinks that are completely tailored to the ladies. Like one was called Lady in Red. I mean, not as many guys ordered it, but you know,
Order for ladies.
what?
Order for ladies.
Yeah,
The
yes,
guy order for ladies, right?
yes. But I think he also like from our cocktail menu, you actually do have men and women equally ordering from that menu and drinking off of that menu too.
Okay. Yeah, because I must confess that I'm more of a whiskey person than a cocktail person, right?
Oh, you can come over. We'll drink the whiskey too.
Yeah, but yeah, I'll do a cocktail at Jekyll and Hyde.
Oh, whiskey. I'm okay with whiskey too.
Right. And I guess you don't run it day to day. You have the general manager to manage it for you, right? Because you have a day job as
Yes.
well.
Yep. Definitely. So you really do have to depend on the team to work on the operations and make sure things are running well. So yeah, thankfully we've got a good team, and things are knock on wood, hopefully getting better day by day. So
But it's still challenging, right? To hold a job and at the same time run a business on the side.
yeah, there are a lot of things that you do have to like look at. You have to pay the bills. You have to look at some of the issues that pop up. They're still coming to you to make decisions and all that. So it definitely is hard to juggle. It just means that you're basically working like 24/7, like literally 7 days a week. And when I wake up, I'm either working out or like doing my day job work or like doing bar work, and then all the way to the evening.
Wow. How do you even have the energy to keep up with all these things, right? Do you even have some leisure time for yourself?
Not as much sometimes, but it's okay. I mean, I spent my first two jobs were very intensive, so I don't know. Maybe I'm just like punishing myself, or I'm just like used to it. But yeah, my first job I was cool was at Goldman, so I spent a lot of time like working. And Goldman Sachs.
So is it like a withdrawal syndrome? Suddenly you feel that, oh, I have like maybe 10 minutes a day, so I should start another business on the side?
No, sometimes there is that. I think like sometimes when I get my hands get a bit itchy because I just like have spare time, I always feel like I should be doing something. So yeah, I do like to keep busy, I guess. I think for me, I think one of the things for me is just like if I feel I'm not using my time wisely or doing something productive with it, I get quite annoyed with myself. So Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. It sounds like it's more like you're really enjoying the process, right? By
Yeah.
being yourself busy and useful. It doesn't seem more like, oh, I have this goal. I want to build the biggest bar chain in the
I,
world.
I
You're not
think it
with
changes, right? So like now the goal is to go and build like the most successful like bar brand in Singapore, right? Maybe not the bar, but then we'll see how it goes after that. I think for me, like what drives me is like I really like working on different projects and different ideas. Like even at my day job, I work on different projects right now and execute and launch different products. At Uber, I was doing the same thing. And then with the bar, I think one of the fun things about it is that it really allows me to stir my creative juices, and I'm always able to kind of like work on developing new ideas and new projects and stuff for the bar. So that is very fun. But it's good because my bartender and my manager and all that try and keep me in check sometimes and say, hey, let's like do one thing well first, and then we do the next thing, which is super valid.
So I guess that because your day job is more tech related, a lot more innovative,
Yeah.
and having a bar is more of the artistic style of it rather than the technological advancement in that area. So I guess that is some sort of like it complements each other. Am
Yeah.
I right to say?
No, they both work well together. Like my current job, I like, yeah, again, like launch different products. It's the same thing as like launching quote unquote different products at the bar, right? So it's like you're still looking at launching it and then trying to figure out how to get consumers to use it. So it's a very it's similar. There are parts of it that are similar.
Okay, just that the domains are different.
Yeah, much bigger domain versus the bar, which is a much smaller domain.
But it's still interesting. And any advice for aspiring bar owners?
Bars are actually probably a better margin than restaurants. So if you want to go into F&B, bars aren't the worst thing. Number one thing for any F&B or any entrepreneurs in general is always hire your accountant first. No matter what, hire your accountant first. That's my number one piece of advice. I think second is I think really think about the customer experience. I think I mentioned that earlier already, but it's like, why do you think customers are going to come? Are they going to come for the good drinks? Are they going to come for the good stuff? Are they going to come for the good food? Because like it doesn't matter how good your food and drink are. If your service is bad, people just won't come back. And people come back for the relationship and the experiences that they have with your team and with the space in general, the memories that they create there. So you have to think about that when you're creating that space, because that's what matters. That's what brings people back. The food and drink is important, but it is only half of the equation. Um, and then I think lastly, yeah, just like don't be so naive. Like really think through things. Ask people for advice to understand. What could and might go wrong. Like people always told me don't go into F&B, and I'm like, oh shit, I should have just put it in Amazon stock 2 years ago. I've done like way better, but hindsight's 2020, and then you also learn and you also build intangible. There are intangibles that you get from the bar, like the people that you meet. I've met some really good friends from the bar. The kind of like experiences that you get running your own business is huge compared to working for someone else, right? Like working for the companies that I've worked for, you're spending someone else's money. It's super easy to, but when it's your own money, you think a lot more about that dollar and how you can stretch it. I think that's super valuable in general too.
Okay, thanks for the tips. And I was quite surprised with the first one, which was hiring an accountant.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to be so important. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think the first few months, because we didn't kind of like put the priority on the accountant and like putting all the documents in place properly, like when we were trying to finally figure out, it's like all over the bloody place, like your receipts, like how much you're actually spending. Because I think going back right to the beginning, like how do you manage like a bar or the economics is if you don't know your costs, you'll never survive as a business. And I mean that's across the board, right? Whether it's F&B or whether it's another business. But I think in particular F&B, it's very messy because you've got so many different like SKUs and different costs coming in. You do have to control that a lot more. And so having the accountant is like super important. And I guess for any entrepreneur, I think that's just like super important in general.
Okay. And probably the last question for me, right? I've probably taken an hour of your time, so I need to respect that.
No
And
worries.
the last question is that if you can rewind the time, right, would you have chosen another path instead of opening a bar?
Super 50-50. I think I go back and forth. There's some days I literally swear and say like, what the bleep am I doing with the bar and all that? And I complain to my girlfriend about that a lot. And she's like, look, like it's been a really good experience for you too and all that. So it's 50-50. I think there are some days where I just wish I had literally dumped it in the market 2 years ago and I have done fantastic. I mean, up until COVID, even then it would still have been fine. And then the other half is like, I think the opportunities and experiences that I've had with the bar are something that you cannot get at all. Like money can't buy, right? And so my answer is I don't know. It's 50-50. It's not no, I wouldn't have, but it's not yes with an absolute certainty either.
Yeah, I guess it isn't a fair question anyway, right? Because life is about going forward rather than reliving the
Yeah,
past.
you don't know what that path would have entailed, right?
Yeah,
Like you don't know what would
yeah,
happen if you had taken the other path. So you can only look backward and as Steve Jobs say, connect the dots. But you can only connect those dots. You can't connect dots that you never got to see.
yeah. But I definitely empathize with that is because as an entrepreneur myself, there are also ups and downs, right? And you know, when you're ups, you think, oh yeah, that was a great decision. You know, I went into this business. Then when it's on the downside, it's like, oh shit, what did I get myself into, right? Life would be easier and better if I didn't start this business. So
Exactly.
I guess probably every entrepreneurs go through that, right? Every
I think
entrepreneur.
everyone does do that. Whether you're a tech founder, like I'm sure
Yeah.
Travis Kalanick, when he was at the top of this game and he was like, worth like 60 billion or whatever billion it was, and shit hit the fan. He's probably thinking like, why did I even start Uber? I should have just like gone and done something else. Like, I think everyone will always have those issues, and I think you see that across the board with different industries. I mean, talk to all the entrepreneurs, they'll always be like, man, like. It's sometimes it's like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I even doing this? Like, you have to remind yourself. Yeah.
And I guess it's at the same time it's cruel, but at the same time it's also beautiful, right? That you have gone through that process, or you call it the rite of passage, then you can really understand and empathize that journey.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's very easy, right?
And you can empathize with other people too. Definitely. Yeah.
Okay, man. Thanks for the time spending with us, sharing a lot of intimate details about running a bar. And audience, okay, remember Jekyll and Hyde is now at 74 Neil Road. Please support. Okay,
Yeah.
try the Mr. Bean cocktail. Okay, I will try that when I go to Jekyll and Hyde the next time. Right, I'll drag along a few friends. Okay, to
Nice.
patronize, as well as to try some of the local fusion dishes that you mentioned about. So it's good to really hear entrepreneur in Singapore that was that's really very passionate about the F&B business, right? Really creating that art in the F&B business. Otherwise, it's very mundane, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's good to see that kind of new trend that you're setting. And definitely, we want to support as much as we can, right? And thanks for coming for this show. Thank you, Chien.
Thank you so much, Alvin. Appreciate it.
All right. So, yep. Till the next time, we'll have the next interview next week, and we'll try to do this weekly. And Ee Chien is the first of our entrepreneurs that probably we will interview more. And I really think that for Singapore, we need more entrepreneurs who are really willing to take the risk and put their skin on the line, right? To really create something of value to society. So,
Definitely.
on behalf of the Singaporeans, right? I really applaud the spirit that you have gone through during COVID-19, and yet you didn't give up and did even better than before, right?
Thanks, Alvin. Appreciate it.
All right. Okay.